Greetings, Earthlings. I'm Alan Boyle, Aerospace and Science Editor for GeekWire, and I'm here with Brooks Peck, who is the curator of a new exhibit on Star Trek that's keyed to the 50th anniversary of the show's premiere, which I remember very well because my babysitter let me watch Star Trek.
Oh, good for them.
Do you remember?
I was too young. I mean, I was born in '66, the same year Star Trek was, so I was too young really to see it in the original incarnation, but grew up on the reruns every day after school at 5 o'clock. I was a little kid, so it imprinted on my brain at an early age.
Well, let's take a trip down memory lane.
All right. Yeah. Well, the exhibit is called Star Trek Exploring New Worlds, and we're looking at how Star Trek has been this enduring and ongoing series for 50 years with lots of films, lots of series, and really we're asking the question, why is that? Why is Star Trek so powerful? The answer, I think, has to do with a lot of the themes and ideas that Star Trek brings forward. How Star Trek shows this optimistic future, how it shows humanity at their best, and we've overcome things like war and poverty, but also we've overcome our differences, and we're working together. These are ideas that really fire people's imaginations.
And it was a multiracial crew on Star Trek, and some would argue the first multiracial kiss, and a lot of that action happened here on the bridge.
Here on the
Tell
bridge,
me about the bridge.
So what we have here are really the key set pieces from the original series. Captain Kirk's command chair, plus a Kirk costume and a McCoy costume. You know, McCoy's always standing by with him to give him advice. Right. And this is one of my favorites. This is the Helm and navigation console. So Chekhov sat there and Sulu sat there in front of that scope. These are the original set pieces, 50 plus years old. We've done a little restoration work on this control panel to get the lights and switches back up and running, kind of bring a little life back to it.
But it struck me how you see the wear and tear on the cardboard bridge equipment. Is that something that you wanted to keep as is? Because it really helped me realize that it's been 50 years.
Exactly. We wanted to show that age, show what it's been through. There's spots where you can see where the paint is chipped away, and you can see like 8 different layers of paint, because every season they would repaint it ever so slightly, things like that. It's really cool, and it's history, and I want to preserve that history and not just paint it over again.
Okay, now where do we go?
Where do we go? Let's go see Uhura. She's another one of my absolute favorites. Her and Spock over here. We have one of Nichelle Nichols' costumes that she wore as Uhura, and the cool earpiece that she used at her command station, her communication station. Another piece of technology that people often point to. You know, when the flip phones came out, everyone started saying, oh, communicators. And now with that, it's like, hey, Bluetooth headset. She was polite enough to take it out and not walk around the street with it, though, which I think is a good thing. And
it's interesting how the costumes reflect maybe not what's going on in the 23rd or 24th century, but what's going on in the 20th century, and they change over time.
That's a really good point. At times, people have accused these outfits of being somewhat sexist, but Nichelle Nichols herself has said, you know, this is what we were wearing in the street anyway. Miniskirts were in, so it was clothes at the time. Speaking of clothes, I want to show you some dynamite clothes over here. So, you remember the Mirror Mirror episode where Kirk and some of the crew go to the mirror universe where everything's sort of topsy-turvy?
Yes,
so this is
Spock and evil Kirk.
Goateed Spock. Yeah. This is the costume that Kirk wore in that episode. It really shows how, since they were expecting people to watch Star Trek probably on a very small set, maybe black and white, they had to really pump up the costume. So this is kind of like, I mean, look at all this gold. It's like a disco outfit or something. And I love it because, of course, in the mirror universe, everything's more exaggerated. So there's all this fringe and all this crazy, crazy stuff. It's totally fun.
Nice.
Are you in the mood for a little Klingons? Let's talk to the Klingons.
Yes. I'm working on my Klingon. Yeah.
Let's hear it. What have you got?
All I know is I don't I'm working on it.
I'll teach you one.
Okay, good.
A greeting. Well, it's not a greeting. It means what do you want, which is the closest Klingons have to hello, and that is nok nach.
Nok nach.
Exactly.
And you have to have that Klingon tone of voice.
Yeah, and you have to spit a little. You know, if you're not spraying it, you're not saying it in Klingon. Yeah. This is a bird of prey model from the original series, which is a great piece of design work by Matt Jefferies. Some Klingon weapons, a knife of theirs, and a super costume over here.
And I think you were saying that various Klingons might have worn parts of this costume.
So the Klingon outfits definitely got used and reused in different combinations over all the series from Next Generation onward. So we couldn't say this is worn by a particular person in a particular scene. Parts of it I've seen Michael Dorn as Worf wore, other parts, other Klingons, yeah. But they knew how to dress.
They dressed for success in battle.
Yes, yes. And intimidation, certainly. Why don't we go back this way? So, I'm actually a Voyager guy. That's my favorite series of all of them. So around here,
oh yes,
we've got Captain Janeway's outfit and Captain Janeway's command chair. We actually have costumes for every captain in all the series here on display. Janeway is one of my favorites, though, and so I asked that she be posed in this sort of Janeway fashion. You know,
right.
She had a lot of authority, and she could be compassionate when she could, when she needed to, but she really needed to take care of her crew, and she would do whatever it took.
And then 7 of 9 was a favorite among young men.
7 of 9 is definitely when they started to want to bring more sex appeal back into Star Trek. If you look at the original series, I mean, we look at things like this and we're like, oh, look at that cat suit, that's very risque. That's nothing compared to what the women were wearing or not wearing in the original series. The original series costume designer, William Ware Tice, he had this philosophy of designing the clothes to look like at any moment they might fall off. And that was what kept people interested. The Voyager crew often battled the Borg. We have a big sizable Borg display, including, this is another one of my favorites. This is the Phoenix, which is Zefram Cochrane's first warp-capable test ship from the movie First Contact. That Borg cube was also from First Contact. And along here, the head appliance that Patrick Stewart wore as Locutus when he got turned into Locutus of Borg in Next Generation. And then finally, great Borg costume.
And I like how you've built in some interactivity into these exhibits, places where people can get their picture taken or actually star in their own movie. This is the sort of thing where I guess you're in what is it, a Borg?
It's a regeneration chamber. So, you know, I'll demonstrate. They don't sleep, the Borg. They just stand in these things and just stand there for a while and soak up the juices or whatever it is they're doing. So yeah, it's a photo op for people. We like to do a lot of hands-on interactives because it's fun and also people learn when they're moving and things like that. So what else would you like to see?
Well, can we take a quick walk up to take a look at the ships?
Yeah.
Because that's my favorite, just to see the different enterprises that they created through history.
We'll take the Jefferies Tube. How about that?
Okay. And we have a few tribbles. Brooks, you were saying that some of the tribbles are spread around here as Easter eggs.
Yeah, you'll find tribbles throughout the exhibit. This tribble up top is an original tribble from the Trouble with Tribbles episode, and then these are some prop ones we have. Although I don't remember putting that many in the case, but
they're getting out.
Oh man, let me ask.
I like this little exhibit. It looks like Data has lost his head.
Data's an android, you know, and so like the other mannequins have heads. This is a reproduction. This is actually a piece made by a local artist for us. We wanted to help tell that story to illustrate that Data he's a form of a robot. He's the character on Next Generation who's always trying to figure out what it means to be human. You know, every Star Trek series has one or more characters who are exploring the human condition. First there was Spock, then Data, then Odo on Deep Space Nine, and so on. So there's a pair of episodes where Data goes back in time, loses his head, and it gets buried, and then 500 years later they dig it up. through a whole time loop kind of thing. So we wanted to kind of talk about that.
And I understand that this painting of the cat, which Data did on one of the shows, is going to be available in the gift shop.
Yeah, we're making prints of Data's painting of his cat Spot. Yeah.
Okay, off we go through the Jefferies Tube. This is the Jefferies Tube, and I just found out from Brooks that it's named after the designer who used this structure to show what the innards of the Starship Enterprise was like.
Yeah, and I like to have secret passages in my exhibits. So inside you can find more tribbles, actually, that have worked their way into the machinery. So why don't we go upstairs?
Yeah. And you've even used the Star Trek theme as we go up the stairs. I think one of the stairways that museum goers will be climbing up has the Boldly Go rubric from Star Trek.
You know, when we do exhibits in this space, sometimes people, I don't know why, miss the mezzanine. So we wanted to really make sure they knew, hey, come on upstairs and see what there is to see. And what there is to see are lots of spaceships, among other things. Closest to us, this is the Enterprise D filming miniature from Next Generation. There were two made for Next Generation, a 4-foot and a 6-foot. This is the 6-foot model. And so, of course, how they would do the effects is the ship would stay still and the camera would move around it, and then that would give that illusion of motion. And they would add all kinds of lighting effects and cool things like that.
But it's not just this ship, but we have a whole variety of other ships, and also kind of a Star Trek-y database so that people can learn more about the ships.
Exactly. With this, you can tap in and learn facts about the ships, or in this case, the Deep Space Nine space station. You can also look at schematics and plans, and you can zoom in and check out different parts of the ships. There's one that's really great on the Enterprise D. Turns out there were decks devoted to aquatic species of the crew. We never saw it on the show, but we get to see it here. So
nice.
That's really fun. Here's the bridge here. Yeah.
Great. And you have all sorts of displays devoted to the social spin-offs from Star Trek.
Yes, this is where we talk about how Star Trek has interpenetrated our culture in so many ways. How you find it referenced in politics. You'll see it combined with sports, like Star Trek Night at Fenway Park. You see architecture inspired by Star Trek starships, cookbooks, craft books. I love the story, for instance, of the first shuttle, the Enterprise. Named, not just coincidentally, there was actually a letter-writing campaign to the president, Gerald Ford, at the time, from Star Trek fans saying, please name the first shuttle Enterprise, and they did. And Star Trek, I mean, that's why it's what the sign says. It's everywhere. Star Trek is everywhere. If you name a field or area of study or something, I could probably find you an example of how someone has used Star Trek to relate to that thing.
So, as we conclude our tour, I wanted to ask, do you feel that this is history, or is this a preview of the future? Are we looking at the past or the future?
That's a great question. I mean, in the exhibit itself, we're looking at the history of the phenomenon, certainly. But it's a living history, and it definitely points ahead. Star Trek is our mythology of the day, and I think as long as Star Trek is inspiring people to think about what should our lives be like in the future, there will be Star Trek as a way to explore those ideas. Because that's what Star Trek is. It's like an experiment. It's a grand experiment where we're like, well, let's see what would happen if we did this or that in story, and that'll help us plan for the future.
And so you can see the future and the past of Star Trek at the EMP Science Fiction Museum. I've been talking with Brooks Peck, the curator of the exhibit, which celebrates Star Trek's 50th anniversary. And you'll be able to see it. How long will people have to take a look?
The exhibition opens May 21st, and it runs through February of 2017.
Very good. So for GeekWire, I'm Alan Boyle, Aerospace and Science Editor. Live long and prosper.